Welcome to the Best Day Ever podcast.
We're your hosts, David and Mavis.
We're a husband and wife team, and we've been working together now for about 11 years, maybe a little more.
Yeah, and it's been a challenging decade of life, love and business, but it got way better when we started to allow God to join in on every area of our lives.
Absolutely. So whether you're just joining us for fun, a dose of Jesus, or casual conversation, welcome. Grab a cup of cafecito, tea, wine, water, and join us as we go through and explore the beautiful, the challenging, and the inspiring of life, love, and business.
This is gonna be the best day ever. You got me looking so fresh. I can't get no better. Baby, I'm a T-Rex, ready to rumble, ready to flex. I'm the king of the jungle. Gonna be the best, best, best. Gonna be the best day ever. Best day
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Best Day Ever podcast with your host, David, who is my husband, and myself, Mavis. So today we're diving into a topic that's really close to our hearts, and it's our journey raising a pit bull. And, owning a pit bull, owning a pet, isn't for everyone, but those who are willing to train and care for them properly can be one of the most amazing parts of life, and just those loyal and affectionate companions that you'll have as you build a relationship with your pet. It can be just such a great experience. So we're going to be talking a lot about that today, from the time that we brought puppy home to losing him, and just covering everything from understanding that breed to responsible ownership.
Absolutely. But before we dive in, we would love to remind you to hit the subscribe button. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a review, share it with your friends, and don't forget to follow us on social media, Suarez Party of Two. That's TWO. Now, Mavis, let's go ahead and open up this episode in prayer.
Absolutely. We're kind of far, but we're still going to hold hands. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for all of your beautiful creation. Thank you so much that you've created an environment for us to live in, that you've created every single detail down to the microscopic level, Lord, that you have entrusted us to care for this planet and care for the animals and all of the creatures that live here, Lord. And we're so sorry, whether for ignorance or just forgetting, Lord, any moments that we have mistreated your creation, and just forgive us, Lord, for that. And we pray that you give us the reminder every single day, when the sun rises and when the temperature changes and when the trees change and the seasons pass, and all of those, may they be reminders of your grace and your love, and that everything and everyone, every living thing has a purpose on this earth, Lord, and give us the ability to see that and to really, truly just appreciate those animals who become such loyal and loving companions to us, Lord, that you've built them and designed them that way, Lord, and that we can just remember those beautiful connections that we get to make with our planet and with our animals, Lord. So thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, to open up this episode, I would like to share the story of the fact that I had a fear of pups. Give me 1 second. Let me fix this over here. All right. So a lot of people would think, you guys must have gotten a pit bull because you're used to animals, you're courageous, you're not afraid of them, I don't know, etc. My point of mentioning that is because before Kelvin, which is our puppy, I never owned any pet. Not a cat, not a dog, not a fish, not a turtle, you name it. I've never had it. I'm a straight up 305 city boy who's never had a pet in his home. And for some reason, growing up, I've created this fear. I had a fear of animals and pets. The only animal, which is also pretty weird, the only animal I didn't have the fear of is horses. I did love to ride horse, but then again, now that I think about it,
but you didn't have one as a
I
pet.
was exposed to it when young. My parents did take me to Colombia, and I rode a lot of horses. Now, then again, I wouldn't say I wasn't scared of it, because I'm thinking about like petting it, feeding it, I wouldn't get to that extent, right? I was more like, all right, I'll ride you, buddy. And then I'm riding a trained horse with under supervision, etc., which is different. But anyways, the point is that we decided to take in our pit. One of the reasons is I wanted to fight my fear. Right? I said we either go big or we go home.
And it just so happens that I have had all the pets that you can imagine. I mean, I grew up in Cuba on a farm, like collecting eggs in a basket from all the chickens on the farm, and being with my grandfather, just ordeñando vacas, right? How do we say that in English? I don't even know.
Milking the cow.
Milking the cows, yes. Milking the cows, just all types of animals, having multiple dogs, and all those experiences was the opposite for me. I didn't have a fear of animals. However, I don't think that I learned how to really love the animal in the way that we loved our first puppy. It was more of like a responsibility. These animals exist here, but there wasn't a connection with an animal like I had with our dog at any point before.
I don't think any of the animals that you've had were actually yours. I
Right.
think they're your parents. The responsibilities of taking care of them were your parents, not necessarily yours, which that ownership is different,
It's a
right?
big difference, yeah.
You having to wake up at whatever time your puppy decides that,
Correct.
they want to go do X, Y, and Z, then, it's just a different responsibility. Yeah.
So Kelvin is the name of our puppy, and we chose that name. We went through back and forth of what we should call him, and we decided on Kelvin because it is the temperature of light. And in photography, in the photography world, that is a very important term, and we figured that would be the perfect name for him instead of calling him something cheesy like Flash, which is totally fine. That was one of our top
If your dog is named Flash,
that was
ignore
one of
that
our
comment.
top options, but we ended up with Kelvin, and we saw Kelvin since the moment he was literally born, because my dad had both the parents and
Right.
in my parents' house, and the dad and the mom both were dogs that my dad had at his house, or that he owned. And when they had puppies, we fell in love, and it was like this one puppy was glowing. It's
Yeah.
like we both were like, this is it, it's this little guy. And since the moment, I mean, we have pictures where he's like smaller than our hand, and he's just tiny, and we would go visit, because as when you get brand new puppies, you have to wait 40 days before you remove them from the mom. And so we had to wait those 40 days, and we would check in on him and like see how he's growing. We could tell him apart, and he has the cutest little blue eyes and the little red nose, and it was just the cutest little thing, and we instantly fell in love with him.
For sure. And I remember going to those visits, still hesitant, like, and I would barely grab him. Sometimes kind of just like got one finger and kind of give him a little small caressing, versus like grab him. I had barely grabbed a dog. My sister had a little Maltese, and then I remember the first time I had grabbed him, and it was literally to like grab him, put it on my lap. I was studying, I was in college, and then but my sister, and I was like, she didn't ask me to walk the puppy. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna go walk no puppy, etc. So that experience of grabbing him so little was great. But I want to say that part of the puppy being so small was part of the plan. Like, he told me, it was, look, I want to make sure if we do get a puppy, it it has to be like from the get-go, very little. He meets us, he knows us, he knows that, you know, we're feeding him, taking care of him. He knows who is the one who's providing for him. So that thought of, this is in my head, I'm playing my own like psychology game here with the puppy, and like to make sure he doesn't bite me or make sure he doesn't attack me. I'm trying to build that trust.
Let him know who daddy is.
Yeah, you know, which later in time, and I'll have a story as to being a little more courageous and allowing the puppy to nibble on my finger. But we'll talk about the first night first, and then we'll get into that. But so that was the strategy behind there, is making sure that the puppy knew who we were. Don't get me wrong, I would love to be that type of person that saves dogs, right? Dogs who have been mistreated, and
which happens a lot with pit bulls.
Yeah.
But we're just not quite there yet.
I don't know if I'll ever be there, because at the end of the day, I think that you just have to be a natural animal lover. But I do admire people that are brave enough to do that, because I do think that the puppies are so smart. Dogs are so smart to like know someone that was beating them and abusing them to then someone showing them love. But you know, at the same time,
as a matter of fact, Kelvin's dad was a rescue. He was given to my dad, and he was in a not so wonderful situation, and my dad had to, you know, he was going to be a vet. He loves animals. He basically lives in the backyard versus inside the house. And so, you know, he had to really be careful with Kelvin's dad, because he was afraid of humans, and you can tell he would like back away when a human was coming close, and so slowly my dad started to like let him, you know, feel comfortable and not be fearful, but even to the point where you know, he would, you come close, he would shiver, all those things. And when my dad would come close, he was more calm, like almost like he already knew, like, okay, this situation is not the same as the one that I'm in, but I don't know about any other one of these humans that comes close. So yeah, they're very smart, and it's a shame that sometimes people mistreat the animals.
Absolutely. Well, the first night of I remember the first night I was even terrified. Again, just, you know, maybe I was thinking about, you always, there's a saying like, oh, you know, the puppy is never gonna sleep on the bed.
Even I said that too. I was like, no, not sleeping on the bed.
And I think that sucker, since day one, he was able to get
so
away with
we tried the kennel for a little bit. I remember him being a little chubby, and he was so delicious that he just but so in the beginning it was a crazy change for us, because I mean, when you have a puppy, it's just like having a baby, especially if you get them really tiny. It's like,
now we know
it's great training for you to be a parent. But the beginning, it was like the cage was too big for him. And so then we were always told like, oh, a dog will never go to the bathroom in its cage. And we're like, well, we must have a very different kind of dog, because he just went to the bathroom in his cage.
No, but we messed up too. It was a learning curve for us, because the cage that we got was bigger, but they did give us a
separator.
I guess you'd call it a separator, but basically what you're supposed to do is reduce the space of the cage. So if the cage is, let's say, 4 feet in depth, and the puppy is very small, you're supposed to put it where it's only, I don't know, a feet or 2 feet. So he does not do pee-pee in the area he lays down, and it's the same area. There's no two areas. There's laying down or laying down, right? So if he pees there, then he's gonna be laying in his pee. Correct. When we did that shift, I do remember that he was better, and then obviously having to go every hour outside to walk him, so that he understood.
Potty training. It's potty training. You know, and it's funny because you say, well, why did you get such a big cage for a puppy? Well, because he was going to be a big boy. Yeah. So, you know, we were like, let's just get the big cage now. And so now you know that tip. If you have a puppy, just make sure the space is reduced enough to where they don't find a little corner to go to the bathroom in.
And we were training him to be an inside dog, because I know some people have outside dogs, and there's a whole different world technique for that. But Calvin was definitely an inside dog.
Yes.
So much so, I remember him. We're doing a barbecue outside. Man, 5 minutes outside, and he was already at
Scratching
the door, scratching to come back inside. Like, he needed some AC. It was too hot for him. So, but let's talk a little bit more about understanding the breed, babe, if you want to touch on that.
Absolutely. So I kind of did a little bit of research for what the history or the timeline. Very brief. Again, we're not like experts here in pit bulls or theology or any of the above, except photography. I feel like we're experts in photography. But there was a time in the 1980s and 90s where pit bulls got a really bad rap. But before that, pit bulls were actually a top choice as a nanny dog, like protectors of children, and especially during the times where, the drafts and a lot of men and households were being left with moms alone at home. The American pit bull was like a hero. He was the protector of the family when the father was gone. And so they're very affectionate and very loyal, and they're sturdy, and they're ideal with children. Now, the caveat here is they're ideal with children with exposure to children, right? So that was really something that stood out to me when I was doing the research. It's everything they need to be exposed from puppy to when they grow. So this is where I understand David's concept of being a little bit difficult for him to rescue an animal that we don't know what its past has been like. Now, of course, when you love a puppy, when you love a person, right, you kind of try to see past those things and try to figure out a way to get to them. And with animals, it's a little hard because we don't know what they're thinking, or we can't talk to them, and so we have to rely on like other abilities. And so like that's one of the things that my dad was able to do, but he didn't have that fear, and he had a lot of experience with animals, like I said before, to the point where he was going to become a vet, right? So it was very important, I think, to point that out, that having a pit bull from a puppy stage, if you are in a position where you haven't been around animals much, or you're not sure about the breed, is important to note. Try to get them from when they're really, really, really tiny.
I loved it because with him I learned how to overcome the fear of having a puppy, of having a dog, of grabbing him, and then as he grew, like I remember it was yesterday, stepping into that decision. All right, I need to learn for him to at a younger. Right, he was super puppy, sticking my finger in his mouth. And to some of you dog lovers, animal lovers, you'll be like, man, he doesn't do anything. But think about a fear that you have, right? Whether it is jumping from a fear of heights, and what it is to jump off a roof, or fear of snakes. Oh, the snake doesn't. You have fear of snakes, but they give you a very friendly snake. The yellow, I don't know what they call them snakes, but the ones that they always at the park or at a festival.
The Britney snake.
Carry this snake, and you're like, I don't care how friendly you think it says it's supposed to be. It's a snake.
Right,
I have fear of it. Blah blah blah. So for me, that's the way I saw animals and dogs. So although the puppy was, I don't know, let's say 4 months in, and
little baby teeth,
I'm still like, I'm thinking, he's gonna bite the heck out of my finger, and I'm gonna start bleeding and whatever. I remember, drinking a little bit of that curry juice, the happy juice, trying to feel a certain way, until finally I was able to, when I was playing out with him, he was able to do it one time. I was like, and then did it again and again, but we literally did that together, and I learned. Now, that doesn't mean that I go around sticking my hands in every dog's mouth, because
Correct.
Every dog
or
is
even
different.
touching dogs without the permission of the owner, and that's just being respectful. Like, you don't just go straight to a dog, because you never know like what that owner has trained the dog to do. Maybe it's a protection, and that is something that could trigger the dog. So there's responsible ownership as a dog owner, and then there's responsible just being in the vicinity of a dog. You never really know. Now, and going back to temperament, there's a couple of things that I feel like are less talked about, especially after getting that bad rap for pit bulls. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen a pit bull smile, but we have surely seen, the goofy grins and like the cuddles and overall like just loyal, loving creatures in pit bulls. And they're super entertaining and endearing. And I don't know about you, David, but I felt like our dog communicated to us without having to talk. Like, he had expressions, he had a personality, he had that never give up attitude. And that's one of the things that helped us feel protected as well. Like, even though we're raising him to act a certain way, but he is also a protector, a natural protector. And so that never give up attitude was something that we really liked about a pit bull.
And that didn't happen early on as a puppy. That's something that developed. And actually, to the next point that I would like to talk about is, the importance that early socialization with other puppies and training, specifically training, has while you own any dog, in this case a pit bull, because that personality that he created, that we understood each other, was because of the fact that we started young to train, to put boundaries, right? It wasn't, and that goes for dogs, that goes for kids, that goes for a relationship, right? If you're not setting those boundaries from the beginning to be very clear, then later we can't expect anything better. So the fact that we invested time in him in the beginning, but let's go ahead and talk about what did that look like for us?
So it's funny because when we would tell people, oh, we got a pit bull, they would be like, or they would be like, oh, and it's almost like you could see how they would judge whether to the right part or to the wrong part of what a pit bull would be. And, I just want to touch on that really quick because it kind of blends into early socialization and training so that we can start to change the perspective of people seeing a dog a certain way. So in 1 Samuel 16:7, it says, the Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And God created animals just as he created us. And I think that, we all have judgments and preconceived notions about so many things based on what we've grown up with. And we got a lot of judgment from people. Like, so many, like I said before, so many like good judgments or bad judgments. And it's important that we kind of educated ourselves in how to raise the pit bull correctly so that we can combat those negative judgments and really just give that dog so much love. So one of the first things that we did was do training at PetSmart, which was a very low commitment monetary wise. It was like $117 for a couple of weeks courses. So that was a really good thing. And there were other puppies in the class with him. So we were able to see him interacting.
Yeah, mind you, the funny thing about that is that, again, I'm afraid of dogs. And I'm about to go into a pet supermarket or a pet store full of other dogs, puppies, nonetheless. I mean, they're not trained. And I'm going in with my own dog. So you can imagine that was an interesting time. But although I was scared of dogs, the fact that I was going in there with my dog, I was just focused on mine completely. I had a sense of peace, and the fact that everyone was there for that, right, to train. And hands down, it wasn't like we had, 2-year-old pups trying to learn with little pups. We were all little pups.
Yeah,
so that was a cool thing that they did to learn the basics, right? But that's the thing, the basics are fundamental, from learning how to sit, how to stay. I remember there was one puppy there that would constantly be barking
Yes.
There was a Labrador, I believe it was, and the instructor was strict as to turn him around, face him against the wall, and then, you know, the owners would sometimes do it, sometimes not, and the instructor would be like, listen, they know that you're gonna sometimes do it, sometimes not, if you're not strict and consistent. Like, consistency there was definitely
Consistency
key.
and treats.
And treats. Oh boy, yes, that's very true.
Yes.
Very true. So I really loved the training that we did there. The positive reinforcements.
And it
that we
equips us
learned.
too. It equips us to be better parents, just like we do with our kids. You know, I think that an animal, being responsible for an animal, and you start to build a bond. You know, a lot of people don't understand if they don't have animals, but you start to build this bond with your dog, just as if you would create a bond with a child, you know, and it's the same thing. When you love your child, you want to be able to be equipped to, as best as you can, because you're never really ready for a kid and you're never really ready for a dog. For anything, you're never really ready for anything. So you have to just trust God to lead you in the right way to do things, right? And so just being, you know, getting that education, being equipped to handle a pit bull and all of the demands, all of the exercise, the stimulation, the care, the behavior, all of those things we had to learn how to do to be better parents to our puppy.
And taking the time to socialize them. That was another key thing. Like, I remember I went to a chocolate Labrador's house. Again, afraid of dogs. Less afraid now. But nonetheless, I was still afraid because I remember they started running around, and they're still very pups, so there wasn't no. To be honest, I didn't have the fear at that moment of them fighting. It was more of the fear of the pup coming to me, like the Labrador, like jumping on me. This guy had
a big
vert.
puppy.
It was a heavier puppy than Kelvin, and he had more vert for sure, hands down. And then I remember there was this deck, and so like the launch of like when that puppy was. It was like landing very close to my face, man. I was like, whoa. I remember having to like pull back and be like, hey. But the fact that I wanted him to be more social, I had to take out the time. Hey, dude, you want to go hang out so that the puppies could, you know,
yeah, it's like a play date.
Just like a play date.
And you
man.
know what?
It's just
Taking
crazy.
him to different places also
Parks.
was really challenging and we would never leave Kelvin without a leash. You know,
Yeah,
because
no.
at the end of the day, he's a pit bull. And guess what? If there is some kind of situation, they're going to blame our dog just because of the fact that he's a pit bull. And as much as we don't want that judgment to be upon us, we have to be aware that that judgment exists so we can take action and be responsible in our own situations and with our puppy. And so taking him to dog parks and taking him
So
to...
stressful.
You know, I remember we took him to Snyder Park, which is like an area where the dogs can go and like
Really cool.
swim. It was
In the lake, no? That was the one
coolest.
with the lake?
Yeah, it was like a little lake for the dogs, and it was the coolest. But we had to be so careful because there was loose dogs everywhere. And I mean, in the lake we had to let him loose because how else is he gonna swim? But everywhere else we had our eye on him. We were really paying attention.
I remember when we let him go that day, and the pups for the most part were great, and then there's this one wolf that started growling. I was like, oh, that's my cue. Come here, Kelvin. You know, and then I had to put him and try to get him away from that area. But
well, they need, you know, moving on to exercise and mental stimulation. Like, pit bulls need you to work them out. Like, you can't just have a pit bull and expect them that they're gonna lay down all day long on the couch. Like, these are active dogs. We used to run in the morning every single day. Run with him in the morning because he needed to get that exercise. Because if he doesn't, then he gets the zoomies and he starts, you know, jumping over the
Zoomies.
couch and
That's right.
going crazy up the stairs and then back down and then up again and then back down. So you really need to be able to, you know, give them the ability to
I remember
run and
us.
do things.
So for those days that you don't want to go for a run, I remember us that I used to go get on my bike and then put him on a rope, and we would go biking together. Those are great, and that really for anybody who's looking for. And I remember seeing a guy in a scooter. Now that was bad. At least I'm doing a little exercise. This guy was literally on a freaking electrical scooter going down the street to get their pups tired. So I think that's where I got the idea from. I was like, let me go on a bike. Mind you, if your dog is not ready in command wise that listens or whatever, I don't suggest it, because if that
especially
dog
when they grow
sees-
bigger, because at that point Kelvin was already like 60 pounds, and
Way bigger.
because he ran so much every morning with us, like he was just built. And I will leave like in the comments or something some pictures and things of our dog when he was with us, and he was just big and buff, and you could see his muscles, and he was a happy, healthy dog. And like he loved tug of war, he loved running, he loved jumping and hanging, you know, like we would hang something from the tree, and he would just, you know, put his bite into it and just hang from there. So those are okay activities, and they actually are great activities. At first I was like, why is he hanging? And in reality, that's great for him, and it's very stimulating for him to do those kind of
You know, it's something
exercises.
I loved but hate at the same time.
What?
It was those. You're walking down the street. We used to live in Fort Lauderdale. You're walking down the street in the city, and then people will look at you, and then they look down and they see your dog, and they just get the nasty stares. Part of me was like, man, why are you judging my pup? And the other part, I was like, that's right, cross over to the street, you know, cross over to the other sidewalk. And to be honest with you, I would let Mavis walk by herself with the pup, because I knew literally people, it was the most random people that weren't scared. And it was like more like young girls that would just be, but men, Bill, man, I remember one time we were walking, it was night, dark, 8-9 o'clock at night, we're walking together, and there's this this guy was tall. This guy was extremely tall.
I remember that.
And I never forget, and I cracked up so much. Walking, he looks at us, he looks down, but by the time he looked down, for some reason he didn't see, he's walking towards us, for some reason he didn't see our pup. He looked down in that moment, and his reaction of fear, I wouldn't be surprised if he peed or even pooped himself just a little tad bit, because his fear just, oh man, oh. And it was the funniest thing ever. 7 feet, kid you not. But, you know.
And mind you, our dog, I don't exactly remember, but I'm sure he had his tongue out and was like, you know, like not crazy at all, but because he had such a big head.
Yeah, he was a built dude.
And he was so like cut.
And what the stigmas that people have with pit bulls. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember we would sit on the bench too sometimes and talk, and he would just be at the forefront of there and like looking to the side and then to the other side, just very protective. And so we always felt so safe, even living in the city, with him, knowing that he was going to protect us.
And don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure that if we would have taken it to the next step, we could have gotten him trained to be even more on command and just now there's controversy on that people tend to like say if you train them too much, you take out the pup out of them, and I think that's the reason why and again, this is the first time for us, so for those people who have more information about this, we'd definitely love to hear more, and in the future hopefully have you on this podcast.
Absolutely,
to talk
we would
about
love
that. What we found out, or what people told us, what we were listening to, hearing, it was that fact that you might take out the pup out of the dog a little bit too much if you go with a more strict command type of lifestyle. So we didn't go that far out, but it was you definitely felt protected. His natural instinct was to stand and just look left, look right.
And he was, and the thing is, like, he wasn't giving off the vibes of I'm gonna eat you. Like, no, he was just observant. And when he would observe someone suspicious, because people walk by and he wouldn't move, right? It was more of like if he felt something, because you know dogs have those instincts, felt something suspicious, something weird, something strange, his ears would perk up. And that would be the difference between us being like, all right, it's time to go, or it's okay.
Let's change.
It's
Let's avoid these situations.
Correct.
There's so many accounts that do such a good job at giving you advice on, you know, we're not dog trainers, so this is not our, we just wanted to share the story of our pity and to kind of open up your minds to it. But let's move into the healthcare and nutrition, because our puppy, let me tell you, this little guy gave us so many issues, starting from the ears. I remember. So he had the fluffiest ears that you just wanted to play with all day.
They were so soft.
Yes, absolutely. But part of those fluffy ears, the fact that he had that lab, which there's two reasons why people cut their ears. One, because they want them to fight, and they don't want them to be able to grab from that part, the dog to be able to grab from there. And the other one, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is so that the ears could have easier access to air and it doesn't get so many infections, because we had to consistently be cleaning his ears.
He would get ear infections all the time. And that's some of the common health issues from my research in pit bulls is skin irritations, ear infections, allergies, gastrointestinal problems as well. And they have a higher than average rate of hip dysplasia. So those are some of the things that are common. Now, we always had the ear infection problem, no matter how young or old he was. And then we started to see some allergies with the food a little bit later on, like it would be in the form of a skin rash or things like that. And when we started to look into it, we started to change his diet a little bit. One of our friends that lived in the building at the time, they actually opened up a nutrition and special store. I can't remember or recall exactly what it was, but it was a store that had more than just PetSmart. It was very niched down to like luxury dog food and things like that. And we went with him to try to narrow out what are the things that are causing him the allergy. So we ended up giving him lamb and kangaroo, because before that we were giving him, I mean, what do you feed a pit bull? You give him lean meat and eggs. Like that's just what you do, right?
Oh, we also gave him just a pebble type chicken and steak, but that gave him a reaction as well,
right? And that's when we switched to giving him more of like the meat and like the real foods versus like the processed pebbles and things like that.
And you hear both stories out there. You hear people who are pro giving them raw food, and you hear people who mention not to give puppies raw food for whatever reason it was. We decided to go with in the beginning, giving him some raw food, and like when he didn't want to eat his pebble food, for example, I remember putting a little raw meat and then some eggs in there to just moisturize and make it yummy. Nowadays there's so many different types of food out there. Almost, I would say, like the wet food that is, you know, to for the puppies, and it's expensive, man. It's like gourmet food for these guys to eat good. So
and they eat a lot. Pit bulls eat a lot. I remember feeding Kelvin like up to 3 times a day, like big portions. And it was, like we would buy more picadillo for him than we did for us.
Yes.
And way leaner too. Like
true.
we would get like 97% lean for our dog, and for us to be like, which that has changed a lot, you know, nowadays. But, you know,
thank you, Hilda.
Thank you, Hilda and Randy. So, you know, he was eating kangaroo, he was eating lamb, and he was doing great. He looked healthy. We moved into, you know, a townhouse, a lot more space, less city. We were able to walk him around the beautiful lake and kind of enjoyed our time with him so much. But then, unfortunately, you know, we had a very scary diagnosis with him. And this is the part where, you know, we kind of get a little sad, and we do apologize if our tone changes. It's just so he was going to the vet. We left to shoot a wedding in a December, and that was a whole 7 days. We normally wouldn't leave for more than 2 days, and we would have a babysitter from Rover, which Rover is an app, a puppy sitter. So Rover is a dog sitting app that we discovered when we needed to go out of town, because at that time we were shooting a lot of destination weddings. And so we needed that. And so we went on a trip for 7 days, and we were hesitant. We actually went with a new babysitter that it's a dog sitter that had almost like a farm style where the
cool.
puppies were going to be able to run around. We went before we left him there. We did all our homework, all the things. So we come back, and this dog was unrecognizable. Like, he was skinny. He was sad. It broke my heart. And I said, David, never again are we going to leave for this amount of time. This is ridiculous. And so we got him back, right? So we continued to give him his food and do his regular routine, and, grooming him, all that stuff. We took him to get his labs done. Everything supposedly was fine. But then on a regular visit, I can't remember if it was a regular visit or another reason why we went. The second time around.
Yeah, I can't remember the second time around, but they caught I know why. We were thinking about neutering him. And when you're going to neuter a pup, they check certain, something about hierro or something like that.
Yeah, they check certain blood levels, so they do a blood test.
Yeah.
And they check other different things that they need
to know about.
He did gain some
weight as well. So
he was coming back. I think
it was also the fact that he was in open farm. There were other pups, and they were, which is great. They were just running. And this little guy was like, woohoo, because he's always more, although we would go on the bike rides and the runs, that was nothing compared to like going to your friend's house and playing soccer all day freaking day, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
And we've never left him for that long of a time as well. So that could have been, a little bit of a depression there, because, that happens sometimes with the dogs. But so we didn't know exactly what had happened, but we took him to the vet, and we just wanted to make sure everything was fine. And then we got him back to where he was. Before good. We were like, okay, he's good. We're not leaving. We're here. And then we had to go to check for the neutering, because the thing is that, he was getting much more active, much stronger. He was, dancing with people, if we want to call it that.
Yeah, that's what we used to call it.
And he was just getting a little bit excited.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, I think it might be time to neuter him.
And we lived in the city, so we were exposed to a lot of dogs and pups. And, as a dog owner, you tend to try to evaluate the situation and see what's better. Some people say don't neuter them until they're older. The neutering is not the bad part. It's neutering too young. Some people don't believe in neutering.
There's a lot to consider.
There's so much to consider. For us, we're like, okay, let's neuter, but once the body has developed enough,
and once he's used to also like the activity of going to a vet and going to a groomer's, because we wanted to make sure it wasn't, we've never taken you to the vet and then all of a sudden you're getting neutered, right? So that's something I think to keep in mind too, to make sure that as your puppy grows, you're taking him to get groomed, you're taking them to the vet, so that they can start recognizing that it's not a terrible thing, that they're just going as something that has to get done. So just basic grooming and basic exams and things like that are important to do with them, so they don't get completely scared the very first time when they're two.
And that's when you did those labs to get them neutered, and they said because they give them to put them to sleep anesthesia, the kidneys need to process the anesthesia, and then that's when they saw that the kidney values were high, and that's what kind of led us to be like, okay, so we didn't know about the kidney values before, honestly.
And a lot of this is, and I say it all the time, David, we really need to be paying attention to our blood work, even as humans, our kids' blood work, our dogs, everything, because those kidney values, they printed the reports for us, and those kidney values were high. months and months and months and months in previous visits where they had told us that everything was fine, that he was great, that he was healthy, and he looked healthy. He looked completely healthy. Even that time when, you know, they did all of the tests where they said, okay, his kidney values are really low, we're really concerned. The vet said, but he looks normal, which is why I'm a little confused, and we're gonna have to take him to a specialist because his blood work looks like he's sick, you know, very sick, but his body, his attitude, his, you know, demeanor doesn't. And so he's like, that's probably the only reason why you can't even tell that there's something wrong with him, because of how happy he is and how he carries himself. But there's something seriously wrong here. We need to, you know, go in deeper.
I remember even when so they ordered us to do a MRI, and then I remember that day the doctor comes out. I believe it was
the vet.
Right? The vet comes out and he was like, oh, you know, unfortunately your puppy has 2 weeks left, if that.
2 months. He said 2 months. And I recall that specifically because I asked the question. I was like, what do we do now? And he said, at most he has 2 months. And then we said, well, what about, how can we tell? You know, how can we tell? And he said, when you see that his quality of life is diminishing, he doesn't want to play with the ball, he doesn't want to, you know, eat, he doesn't want to do any of that, it's time.
Go pee.
And so we said, okay, we got 2 months. By the way, I was pregnant at this point. When we were dealing with all of this, I was about 5 or 6 months pregnant. We were so looking forward to our Christmas card with our puppy and our baby in there, and
we
just
had
a complete
missed
family.
That previous Christmas session with him.
Yes, we got so busy that we didn't do a Christmas photo shoot with him the previous year, which was 2020. And little did we know we weren't going to have any more Christmas cards with him in it. So, I mean, it was a very difficult time for us. There was, you know, when the vet said to us after the ultrasound, listen, his kidneys never developed. The only thing that could fix this is a kidney transplant, and they don't do this for dogs. And our hearts sank.
Yeah.
We were distraught. Like that, the next 2 weeks, that's how long he actually lasted. It was 2 weeks. And, you know, we paused everything. We canceled whatever we needed to cancel. We continued doing our photo shoots because, you know, those are sometimes things that you can't really change or postpone. But we were like just all invested in Kelvin. We're taking him to the beach. We had never taken him to the beach. And it just kind of put things into perspective. Like, you know, what is really valuable? And I know, you know, he's a dog, but at that point he was like our baby. We weren't parents yet, and he was just like our baby. And so we spent all this time working and gave him a lot of love, and we gave him a lot of time, but we always feel like we could be giving more, and we could have given more, like taking him to the beach more and all of those things.
And I'm pretty sure some of you are hearing this, and if you're not dog owners, probably saying, what?
What's wrong with these people?
I thought, I'll put myself as like, I thought the same. But when you build a relationship with your pups, it does become way personal. And like losing them or having to decide to put them down, because that's really what happens. He stopped drinking water. He stopped, like he couldn't come down our stairs. He was super skinny. He
didn't even look like himself.
No, I mean this poor little guy. I was like, babe, I mean it's time. I would want to hold on to him as much as we can, but at the same time, this guy's suffering.
I remember David had to carry him down the stairs, whereas a couple of weeks before he would hear the ice machine and he would zoom down the stairs like in 2 steps.
He loved ice.
And at that point, where we were so close to the end for him, he couldn't even walk down the stairs. He couldn't even like process water, and he loved drinking water. And so, we had to schedule. We had to schedule the moment to put him down, and I was so hopeful. I was like, whatever, babe, schedule it, but he's gonna get better and he's gonna be fine. And we took him to visit all of his favorite people, to my parents' house. He got all the cuddles, and to his dog sitter and everybody. We did the whole tour because we didn't know what was gonna happen. And he was so sad when he was here at home, but when he saw his favorite people, he all of a sudden got a spurt of energy, almost like his last bit of energies.
His last playground run.
His last playground run.
He got hurt when his nail started bleeding. It was crazy.
It was so many things that happened. I'm pregnant. Anyways, it comes time for us to put him down, and that day was so sad for us. We woke up and it was his day. We took him to the beach. We fed him watermelon, meat, pizza. We're like, you could try anything you want, buddy. And he ate it with a lot of excitement, but unfortunately he wasn't able to process it. But then it was time for the appointment. And I remember and I'm not going to go into details because it's just really sad. But I remember playing worship music and just praying with the vet, praying for him, and just all that was very, very hard on us. And being pregnant was even harder. It was how can I be happy and sad at the same time? How is this even possible? But God is so good, and he surrounds you with so many beautiful people to help you and to comfort you, not only as God, but as the community that you're with. And I'll never forget Pastor George at our church just painting us the most beautiful picture that really helped us be comforted, knowing that he was in heaven, rolling on the hills of heaven is the picture that Pastor George prayed with us. And I'll never forget that, because that was something that really allowed me to let him go and surrender that, and just find peace in knowing that he wasn't here, but he was with God.
And the funny part is that sometimes sometimes we're asking for a miracle, and sometimes we are the miracle for others. In this case, for our puppy, he had the litter, es que se llama, and all the other pups, they were great. They're still, I think, till today, they're still going. Now, their lifestyle is different. They're more outside dogs, etc. So my point is, we were the miracle for him. He only had maybe 2 years. 2 years. He lasted about 2 years and a little bit. And he was a very spoiled 2-year-old. And we were able to love him.
He was the center of our world.
He had clothes, food,
multiple beds. I don't know if he would have
lasted. Yeah, multiple beds. I don't know if he would have lasted the same as an outside dog. He was spoiled. So although the time was short, we were the miracle for him to give him the best 2 years and some change time that we had together. So, it's with that perspective, because we could have gone down a really black road with this, but honestly, having God close to our hearts kept us strong through it. And
absolutely.
And yeah.
And I think that animals are so important, and God created animals, and he expects us to take care of them and to respect them, and they're part of this world, and not to abuse them. And I think that I kind of want to end with that. Animals are not just animals, they are also God's creation, just like every breathing thing. And we need to remember, I believe, and again, I'm not a theologist or anything like that, but in Proverbs 12:10, the righteous care for the needs of their animals, but the kindest acts of the wicked are cruel. And in this scenario, what I looked up, what does this mean, right? And one of the things that I encountered was Solomon connecting the person's righteousness to the treatment of their animals. And that's so important to say, because how we act is a reflection, I think, of what's in our hearts. And just being able to care for the animals shows that you have that mercy with them and that love with them. And so I just pray that if there's anybody out there that isn't treating their animals well, like I pray for a change of heart, and that they respect and that they love them. And for specific breeds like pit bulls, it's very common that they're abused, and very common that they're taken to shelters, and all of the above. So I remember one of our friends donating to a cause in remembrance of our dog, and things like that. People who have those kinds of resources, or people who donate to those kinds of resources, or rescue dogs, we're so thankful for you, because this is such a difficult thing to go through, seeing dogs like our puppy being mistreated, and you see it all the time in the news, and that's part of why they're so aggressive, is because they're raised to be. And so I just pray that whoever's out there, hopefully this changes somebody's heart about how they're treating their animals, if they're not treating them in a loving and kind way.
Bueno, with that, I want to go ahead and thank the Lord for allowing us to complete another episode. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. As I mentioned in our second podcast, we're totally looking forward to the future. We won't be able to have guests on this show discuss on what recommendations they have for you in their expertise, and more importantly, to be able to connect others to help others. With this, we'd like to remind you to make today and every day
your best day ever.
ever.